Okay, so this is a sort of a video response to Piero314 in one of his recent videos talking about consciousness, and we kind of went back and forth a little bit in comments on a couple of his other videos, and I'm not really getting entirely where he's coming from. But the thing is that I'm going to be talking also about just something, a topic that I wanted to bring forth at some point, these concepts that I've been trying to put together in my mind, and I will freely and readily admit that some of this is not fully developed and maybe even half-baked. Some of this stuff I'm going to be talking about is stuff that I wanted to bring forth later, but now I feel kind of compelled to go ahead and put it out there, because I want to respond to some things and maybe get some conversation going. So, in Piero's video, and I'm sorry I don't recall the title right now, but he starts talking about how plants have consciousness. And I'm pretty sure he knows that when he's saying this, he's going to get some squinty eyes. You know, what the hell are you talking about? Now, if he means the most broad possible definition you could have of consciousness, then okay. But yeah, I don't think in what we normally think of as being consciousness that plants have consciousness, because I really think that it requires some complex neurological processes to produce consciousness. But the thing that, if there is consciousness there, if there's something like experience in the same sort of general sense as our experience as human beings, if there is something like that in plants, and his point was to say, well, the plant is trying to get water, so it's conscious that it's, quote, thirsty, unquote, you know, so it's extending the roots and things like that to get water. And I don't think this holds much weight as an idea, but if it did, well, I'll go ahead and say the reason why I think that that's poor reasoning is because we know, well, there's two reasons really, but one very important reason is that we already know that even single cells will respond to chemicals. Single cells will respond to certain events that take place in their environment. It doesn't mean that they have consciousness. It just means that that's how the chemistry is behaving. So right off the bat, I mean, you can't really just assume that because something is reacting to the environment that it's conscious. I think he's looking at things backwards. And I think that, well, if you were to say, this would probably, I guess, go under the second reason why it's bad reasoning. If you were to say that a plant was conscious and was trying to, you know, experienced thirstiness and was reacting and sending its roots down, if you were to say that, then you would have to say that consciousness has some sort of it comes up in the evolutionary process at some point as a survival tool. And it also is saying that consciousness is doing something. It's okay, here, you know, I'm conscious of this event and now I am going to do this, you know. So there is sort of a hierarchical structure of events, with consciousness being at the top. But yeah, I don't think that holds a lot of weight. I think it's actually the other way around, and I think that evolution produced certain processes that were key to survival, and then over time, as neurosystems got more complex, the consciousness was a result of these requirements of a more complex neurology to get tasks accomplished. And I don't have any real strong opinion at this point as to how far down the chain it goes. But I think consciousness, at the very least, from what I understand about it, would require some sort of neurological complexity. So yeah, I think what Piro is actually arguing is that consciousness is a key feature of evolution. And I would argue the opposite. And I would say that no, it's actually appears to be a spandrel. And it's not the consciousness. Okay, well, here are the consequences, and this is kind of the concepts that I've been kind of rolling around in my head and dealing with. And I haven't really figured this all out yet because I still have a lot of questions. But if free will is not the case, meaning when I say free will, that means your consciousness has some ability to control your body, to do complete tasks, to be aware of something that needs to be done and do it. You yourself, your consciousness, not components of your consciousness, not things that make up your consciousness, but your experience. In my viewpoint, that is libertarian free will. So this is what I'm saying. If that is not the case, and it appears not to be, and we know that evolution is true, which we do, then consciousness is just a spandrel. It's just a consequence of evolution, but it's not a necessity for evolution, unless you say that well, no, I don't think there's any way you could say that it's necessary under those circumstances. There's no real reason why we are conscious that I can really fathom. It seems like the same thing could be done if we were robots. But it just happens to be a consequence of our developed nervous system. So those three things, in my view, can't coexist. You can't have consciousness not doing anything and yet be a feature of evolution. So you have to first argue that that consciousness is a important feature of evolution. And I don't know how you get there. I just don't know how you get there. You can't say, well, I'm observing the plants and then they must be conscious, because that's circular reasoning. No, you have to show why. You have to show why that it must be this way. There must be free will in the sense that I've described. Now, if we're just talking about semantics, and you've defined things differently, that's boring. So let's clarify what we're saying. And I don't like to get too heavily bogged down in definitions and stuff, but we do have to define things. So the other, but I still have a lot of questions about free will and all that in the way I've described. There's certain things that I can't really piece together as making sense under what appears to be no free will. Basically, your consciousness is your subjective experience. So why would you ever if your consciousness isn't actually doing anything, and the Lebesgue experiments and things like that tend to suggest that it's not, and that your consciousness is just more or less along for the ride, or as Dennett argues, is a necessary faux captain of the ship, so to speak, then, and it's not doing anything, then certain subjective experiences can't be pursued. They would just have to be happening. Like if you like going to a concert, why would your just mechanical self, not you, but your body, why would it make itself go to a concert to have that wonderful subjective experience? Going to an art show, a fireworks celebration, whatever. You get the point. Why would you pursue these things if your consciousness wasn't doing it? Because your consciousness is the only thing that's really getting anything out of it, right? And I know I'm speaking really kind of sloppily, but basically your subjective experience is what's being stimulated there. So I can't really think of the motivation, in other terms, in different from just the subjective experience. So these sorts of questions come up, and I'm like, I can't really figure out how that works. Things like that. So maybe consciousness is doing something, and we just haven't figured it out yet. There's a lot of questions, of course, but I think, we can safely say that if it's not doing anything, then it's not necessary and consequential towards, or at least I can't think of how it would be consequential towards the evolution process, which seems to be the opposite of what Piro is arguing. So that's all I have right now. I'll probably do more on this subject. Again, these are not fully developed ideas that I have on this subject, but I thought maybe the time was right to go ahead and just start talking about it openly. So, thank you for listening.